Why would a frozen island with just 56,000 people suddenly become one of the most contested strategic prizes on Earth? And why does the United States believe losing influence there could reshape global security? Greenland, mostly ice and silence to the outside world, now sits at the center of a rapidly warming planet, intensifying great power competition and a shifting world economy. What happens next could quietly redefine control of the Arctic without a single shot fired. If this contest escalates, the Arctic could transform from a zone of cooperation into a new arena of strategic rivalry. If it fails, existing alliances may strain under competing priorities. And if it succeeds, for whoever gains the most influence, it could redraw trade routes, mineral supply chains, and military postures across the Northern Hemisphere. Greenland is no longer peripheral, it is becoming central. To understand why, you have to start with geography. Greenland sits between North America and Europe, guarding the northern approaches to the Atlantic. More than 80% of its territory lies above the Arctic Circle. During World War II, the United States moved quickly to secure Greenland to prevent hostile control of North Atlantic shipping lanes. That logic never fully disappeared. During the Cold War, Greenland became a critical early warning location against missile threats crossing the polar region. The ice may look timeless, but its strategic value has been recalculated again and again. After the Cold War, the Arctic entered a quieter phase. Cooperation replaced confrontation, scientific research replaced military posturing, and the region seemed insulated from global rivalries. Climate change ended that illusion. Arctic ice is thinning at a historic pace, opening seasonal shipping routes that were once theoretical. What used to be impassable waters are now being mapped as future trade corridors, shortening transit times between Asia, Europe, and North America. That transformation explains why Greenland has returned to strategic relevance. Control is not just about territory, it is about influence over routes, resources, and security architecture in a changing Arctic. Greenland's location near what military planners call the Geopolitical Gap, Greenland, Iceland, United Kingdom, makes it essential for monitoring naval movements between the Arctic and the Atlantic. That gap remains one of NATO's most sensitive maritime choke points. Greenland is not an independent country. It is a self-governing territory of Denmark with its own elected government, but foreign policy and defense handled by Copenhagen. Denmark is a long-standing US ally, and the United States already maintains a military presence on the island. The Pituffik Space Base in northwestern Greenland, built under a 1951 defense treaty, supports missile warning, missile defense, and space surveillance operations for both the US and NATO. That reality complicates the idea that control is missing. From a military perspective, Washington already has deep access. Danish authorities have expanded defense cooperation further, approving agreements that allow broader US military access to bases on Danish soil. Greenland's own leaders have consistently emphasized that the island's future should be decided by its people, not external powers. For the mostly Inuit population, global attention arrives late and often uninvited. So why does Greenland keep appearing in strategic discussions now? Minerals. Beneath the ice and rock lie rare earth elements and other critical resources essential for modern technologies, from smartphones and batteries to renewable energy systems and advanced defense equipment. As global demand accelerates, securing stable supply chains has become a priority for many economies. Greenland's deposits are attractive, but extracting them is expensive, environmentally sensitive, and politically complex. Development is slowed by harsh weather, limited infrastructure, and strict environmental regulations. That has so far kept large-scale mining from taking off. But as competition over critical minerals intensifies worldwide, interest in Greenland has only grown. For Western economies looking to diversify supply chains, Greenland represents potential, not certainty. At the same time, other Arctic actors are recalibrating. Russia has expanded its military infrastructure across the Arctic, reopening Soviet-era bases, modernizing airfields, and strengthening its northern fleet. These moves are framed domestically as defensive and sovereignty-focused, but they are closely watched by NATO countries, especially since the war in Ukraine began in 2022. Arctic security is no longer separated from broader European security concerns. China, for its part, has declared itself a near-Arctic state, signaling interest in research, trade routes, and long-term economic engagement. Its concept of a polar Silk Road is tied to broader global trade ambitions, not territorial control. Still, its growing presence has prompted debate among Arctic nations about governance, access, and balance. This is where Greenland becomes a focal point. It sits at the intersection of climate change, resource competition, and military planning. Yet its political reality resists simple narratives. Danish officials have made clear that any attempt to alter Greenland's status would have serious consequences for alliances. Greenlandic leaders have reinforced that autonomy does not mean openness to external ownership. Meanwhile, Denmark is strengthening its own Arctic posture. A multi-billion-dollar investment plan includes new Arctic naval vessels, long-range surveillance drones, and expanded satellite capacity. The Joint Arctic Command, headquartered in Nuuk, oversees sovereignty enforcement and defense coordination. Specialized units like the Sirius Dog Sled Patrol continue long-range reconnaissance across vast uninhabited terrain, maintaining a physical presence in one of the world's most remote environments. All of this underscores a key point. Greenland is already embedded in existing security structures. The debate is less about absence and more about future leverage. Consider the first what-if scenario. What if Arctic shipping routes become commercially viable faster than expected? A reliable northern passage would reshape global trade patterns. Shipping between Asia and Europe could bypass traditional choke points like the Suez Canal. That shift would ripple into South Asia, where ports and logistics hubs depend on established maritime routes. It would affect Middle Eastern economies built around transit and energy corridors. Greenland's proximity to these routes would elevate its importance as a monitoring and support location. Now consider a second scenario. What if demand for rare earth minerals accelerates sharply due to energy transitions and technological growth? Countries across Asia, Europe, and the Middle East would face intensified competition for stable supplies. Greenland's resources could become strategically decisive, even if extraction remains limited. Decisions made now about governance, environmental protection, and investment frameworks would echo globally. There is also a quieter scenario. What if cooperation holds? The Arctic could remain a managed space where scientific collaboration, regulated resource development, and transparent security arrangements prevent escalation. That outcome would reinforce existing institutions and reduce pressure on smaller actors like Greenland, allowing development on local terms. The global consequences of these paths are significant. For South Asia, Arctic trade routes could alter supply chains and energy flows, influencing inflation, shipping costs, and strategic planning. For the Middle East, shifts in maritime relevance and mineral demand could reshape economic diversification strategies. For the global order, the Arctic becomes a test of whether competition can be managed without conflict. Throughout all of this, Greenland itself remains cautious. Its population has lived with external decisions for centuries, from colonial administration to Cold War militarization. Today's attention brings opportunity but also risk. Economic development promises jobs and infrastructure, but environmental damage and loss of autonomy remain real concerns. This is why rhetoric matters. Framing Greenland as a prize ignores the agency of the people who live there and the alliances that already shape the region. Framing it as irrelevant ignores the structural forces transforming the Arctic. The reality sits in between, defined by slow shifts rather than sudden takeovers. As the ice recedes, the strategic fog lifts. What was once frozen out of global politics is now being mapped, measured, and debated. Greenland did not change. The world around it did. What to watch next is not dramatic announcements, but incremental moves, defense investments, regulatory decisions on mining, shipping traffic data, and diplomatic language around Arctic governance. Power in the Arctic will not announce itself loudly. It will accumulate quietly. In a warming world, the coldest places are no longer distant. They are becoming decisive. And Greenland, long overlooked, now sits where climate, commerce, and security converge. Proof that in geopolitics, silence often breaks before stability does.